Alright, you guys. Today is a fun video for me because I get to talk about probably one of my favorite games of 2024 so far, and that's Dragon's Dogma 2. Dragon's Dogma 2 has fully consumed my gaming time right now. I'm about like 25, 30 hours into the game, and I never played the original Dragon's Dogma. So, as much as I understood what the game was, I've seen the trailers, I've been following up to it all the way up to the initial release date. I didn't know exactly what I'd be getting into for sure, right? I knew it'd be an open world. I knew it'd be an action adventure game that relied heavily on like physics battling, etc., stuff like that, with a bunch of side quests and just a lot to explore, etc. Typically I don't go for open world games. It's not my like jam for the most part. There are occasional open world games that I'll vibe heavy with. Obviously, games like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom were special in their own right. I love the Horizon series. There are open world games that I do genuinely enjoy, but typically I like more linear story games with very slick action, a very definitive story, and a very definitive objective throughout the entire game. So typically, if you think of like a God of War game, Final Fantasy 16 is a good example of something that I enjoy, etc. So Dragon's Dogma 2 is a very, very far off course from the typical games that I enjoy to play. So what is it about Dragon's Dogma that has me just like hooked? Why am I so obsessed with Dragon's Dogma? And I think this game showcases a lot of what's great about gaming in 2024, as well as I think a lot of problems with specifically open world games. Things that I think open world games do wrong. I think this game just has it nailed down flat. So in this video, I just want to talk about Dragon's Dogma 2. The like conversation has been surrounding this game pretty much since release, and my overall experience with Dragon's Dogma 2. If you guys like this video, do me a favor and like this video. Please consider subscribing because that does help me out tons. Let's not waste any more time and let's get into, again, just a video of Dragon's Dogma 2. First, I want to talk about the overall, I think, like perception, the how this game has been received, etc., by critics, by the fan base, etc., and gamers just all around. I think Dragon's Dogma 2 released with pretty good, to outstanding reviews. I think from when I hear critics talk about the game, majority of them either really, really love the game or they're kind of like, this is a good game, just not for me type game, right? And I understand that a lot. As far as a lot of the gamers, I think the people who actually play Dragon's Dogma 2 vibe heavily with this game. I think the people who knew what Dragon's Dogma was prior getting into this game got exactly what they wanted, and there wasn't a whole lot of surprise from them. I think the like biggest separation from I think the positive critiques about this game, and if you look into like the negative critiques, a lot of people mention the game feels outdated, the game is clunky, and then there's the whole microtransaction conversation. So first, I want to dive into the microtransaction conversation. A lot of people have been talking about the fact that they had like fast traveling, blocked by a paywall, etc., and a couple other stuff that they kind of just like were quote unquote egregious with their microtransactions. Now, I understand the idea on paper why somebody would say, look at what they're charging for microtransactions and say that's just kind of doesn't make sense. Those are features that should be in the game. But if you really consider what those microtransactions are, a lot of them are like a one-off. You pay for it if you really want to. And then if you look at what the developers of the game said, that a lot of the stuff that they kind of put behind microtransactions are stuff that really kind of breaks the fundamental idea of what this game is. So it's not really the way the game is intended to be played. If you play the game the way it's intended to be played, there should be no reason for you to really dive into the microtransactions. If you really, really, again, want to like not necessarily cheat your way across, but if you kind of want to break the game slightly, then sure, pay some extra bucks. As someone who, again, 25, 30 hours into the game, I haven't really fast traveled at all. I haven't felt the need or want to fast travel at all. And again, that just might be just me. Again, one of the things that the creator of the game said is that they don't need fast travel because there's fun things to do in the open world. When you're traveling from, one village to another village, etc., or side questing, on the way there is so much to do that you get so lost. Maybe towards the back half of the game, I might find myself wanting to fast travel more often, but so far, again, my time in the game, I haven't felt compelled to use any of my fairy stones, to use any of my fast traveling, or even look at the microtransactions list. The microtransactions list are kept very separate from the actual core experience of the game. You wouldn't know where to find it unless you were actively looking for it. At least for me, whenever I jump into the game, again, I'm just into the game and I'm just off and running. There's never anything that stops and says, "Hey, just so you know, you can buy, etc." if you really wanted to, stuff like that. Again, it's kept very separated from at least my core experience. So I feel like the microtransactions, even though they might be egregious to some people, I feel like that is really people just looking at it on paper and not actually playing or experiencing the game. Now, if you're someone who can't do without fast travel, maybe Dragon's Dogma 2 just isn't the game for you, and you might want to consider playing a different open world game that does have a lot of fast traveling, etc. Um, but again, for me, this open world, there is so much to do, so much little nooks and crannies that I dive into, so many encounters that I run into that are not just genuinely surprising, but also just super fun, and I enjoy my time with the game. So again, for me, Dragon's Dogma 2, microtransactions are negligible and it doesn't affect the core experience. So for people who are saying reviewers, we're keeping this a secret, etc., etc., um, I don't think it was kept a secret. I just think that it wasn't affecting the actual experience of the game. So there was, again, no need to talk about it. Again, if I was to review the game, I don't think I would have talked about the microtransactions, because had people not talked about it, I wouldn't even known that there was microtransactions in the game, because it's not in my face and I've gone this far without really seeing it or feel like I wanted it. Um, to deal with some of the other complaints, some people say the game feels outdated or clunky. Um, yeah, this feels like an early PS4, PS3 game with, a couple more tweaks, make it look like a modern day game, but it does feel like a lot of, I think, ideas from the PS3, early PS4 era, especially the way the open world is constructed. Again, back then fast traveling wasn't in every game like it is now, so you really had to make every moment count. Pacing had to be on point with the things that you're doing. Every corner you're taking, there's something surprising. One of the games that the open world kind of reminds me of, and this might be a weird comparison, but last year I played Like a Dragon Ishin, which was a remake of a PS3 game. Every corner I turned in that town, I would run into a random side quest, somebody with something interesting to tell me, someone who sent me essentially off course from whatever I was doing for my main objective. And I find that happening a lot to me in Dragon's Dogma 2. I'll be running across my main objective, and then someone will be asking for help dealing with monsters in the village. Someone will be telling me to go find their friend that kind of got lost in the forest. Or I'll just make my own kind of side quests and find a cavern. I want to go deep down and see what kind of loot is in there. Stuff like that that I tend not to really do in most games. I feel like most specific open world games, I'm always looking at it and saying, okay, what's the next objective? Where do I gotta go? Like if I think of Horizon, which is an open world game with tons to do if you veer off course, but it's very clear where your main objective is and where you want to go. And this leaves a lot of it to mystery. There's so many times that even when I'm doing the main objective, I feel very lost almost the entire time. The waypoint will kind of send you to the general area of what you're looking for, and then after that you got to find a secret door, or you got to find a cave, or talk to somebody that you wouldn't know you're supposed to talk to, etc. Or the time of day, it has to be at night that you have to do these certain quests, or it has to be during the day during these certain quests, etc. Again, all these things that really make the questing in this game feel lively. It feels situational. It feels like there's more than just, hey, go to objective, complete objective, go to next objective. Even though it is kind of that, there are different things that it has you kind of really look and dig deep in for. Again, this is something that I think a lot of modern games don't really do. I think it's very clear where you're going, and it's very clear what you got to do, because they don't want maybe they don't want, you know gamers with a more modern sensibility to get frustrated or get confused, etc. But for me, this is very, very, very refreshing to kind of just play with it myself, figure out what I'm doing, get lost. There's tons of times where I am very lost and I am a little frustrated because I'm like, dude, I'm in the area and I'm doing everything it tells me to do, but for whatever reason I can't find it. Um, but overall, again, I just think that yes, this game feels kind of like a throwback to a different era of gaming, but it's a very refreshing throwback. It's something that I kind of missed in open world gaming, and it's something that made me realize that maybe I don't have a problem with open worlds. Maybe I have a problem with just, I think, how formulaic it is becoming. And I hate saying that because, again, like if I look at the Horizon series, which I think is very, very, very formulaic to what an open world is in modern gaming, and I still love that franchise. So I think it's okay to have that formula if you do it right, but it's very very easy. It's very very easily done wrong. I think when you think of like an Ubisoft open world, etc. There's tons of examples. I think even like some AAA developers try to make their games open world when they really shouldn't have. But yeah, again, overall, this game is a weird gem, especially in 2024, because it really felt like the developers had a very, specific niche that they wanted to cater to, and they weren't, veering off that course. They were dead set on doing this game. And for all it's worth, I'm very, very happy that they didn't compromise their vision of this game in order to appease a fan base or appease a modern day gamer, etc. They just kind of said, this is the game, have fun with it or don't, but that's kind of just what we're giving you. And for me, I'm having a blast with it. um you want to talk about the combat system? The combat system is very clunky sometimes. There's no lock on. There's it's easily you're easily ambushed by enemies every left and right corner. But I think a lot of that kind of plays into not necessarily the difficulty of the game, but kind of your own narrative of the game, if that makes sense. Like, this is a weird RPG. And I know a lot of people do this with specifically RPGs, specifically Western RPGs, where they kind of like make their own lore, make their own like story behind what they're doing. It's something that I don't typically do. But this game like made me struggle pretty early on, as evident by some of my gameplay, where I try to keep some of the poor gameplay in there just to like showcase the learning curve that I was kind of going through, where I found myself being ambushed consistently and trying to find ways where I'm maneuvering around enemies, trying to get to like desperately trying to get to camping spots so I don't die. The physics system in this game is super super fun, super super like enjoyable, trying to find ways to kind of like knock down bigger enemies or scale big enemies or kind of throw people off cliffs, etc. It's very very humorous, it's very very enjoyable. um it's stuff that I think, even though the combat is clunky, it is fun because of the way that you can interact with your enemies around you, with your teammates, with the world. Because a lot of times I'll run into other people having a fight already, and then I'll kind of hop in there and we kind of become little partners for that little bit. Or I see two enemies fighting each other, I come across them and they're all fighting me now. So again, it's it is clunky, it is a little clumsy, but I think if you bear with it and you kind of just groove with it and find something that works for you, maybe change vocations if you need to. Maybe the specific job class you use doesn't fit the way that you might want to play the game. So I will say, if you're finding it hard to really get into the combat system of the game, experiment a little. Maybe pick up some pawns from some other classes that you think look interesting, and then see how they play. And if their play style looks more like something you'd be into, definitely give it a shot. I think the vocation system in this game is something that I really really enjoy. The way you can kind of double class up, the way you kind of switch up on classes. um I went into the game as a fighter, and I really, really enjoyed the fighter. And throughout the entire time of playing majority of the game as a fighter so far, I was thinking back in my head, I don't see myself really changing vocations until I mastered that vocation, and I went on to do the Dragon Slayer thing, and I really, really like that one. Now I'm kind of not upset that I didn't do it earlier because I wanted to master the fighter rank, but now I see the enjoy how much enjoyment I could have by switching different vocations and seeing which ones are going to work well with others and which augmentations are going to benefit others, etc. I think there's a lot of levers at play with the job system or vocation system that make it a little bit more active, a little bit more engaging, etc. So, I mean, I can go on and on about the job system for the main character, but one of the things I really, really, really want to touch on is the pawn system. I think the pawn system in this game is really, really cool. I'm not, again, I didn't play the original Dragon's Dogma, so I don't know how similar this is to the OG game, but in Dragon's Dogma 2, the pawn system is probably one of my favorite party systems I think I've encountered in a game that is different, if that makes sense. Typically, when you think of a party system, you think of like something like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest, where every party has, their own storyline, their way of kind of being integral to the story and gameplay, etc. And in this game, the pawn systems are very much pawns, right? You're the king and your pawns are, I don't want to say servants, but they're very much like there to please you and there to do what you need them to do, um, without really having part of the story that's integral. You make your one pawn, that's your pawn. That pawn is going to partner up with you pretty much throughout the entire game. And then your two other pawn spots are for you to kind of recruit and hire whoever you want whenever you need it. Um, for me, I try to keep my pawn systems varied. My main pawn was an archer. She now mastered the archer rank, and now she's gonna be a sorcerer. So from there, I kind of just see, okay, if I'm a fighter and I have an archer, I might want a thief and a mage. I might want a great swords fighter, and then have something else, etc. So keeping it varied is really, really fun. It adds a lot to the combat system. I think everybody is kind of doing something a little bit different, whether they're healing or dealing a lot of magic damage, or like the thief that kind of climbs them and does a lot of like quick fights, like kind of like does a lot of quick attacks in the thief fights really fast and scales them a lot and is really, really cool. Again, sorry about that. All the, I think, different jobs and how they kind of play into the pawn system, I think, is where this game really, really shines as far as how you play with the combat. And I think it's one of the things that kind of like it gets better and better and better as you kind of partner up your skills with each pawn, as you kind of consider, hey, I'm playing this specific role right now, this specific vocation. What pawns are gonna play well with that vocation, etc. Um, as well as it's kind of cool to use your friends' pawns or other players' pawns, and use like sometimes they'll have a quest assigned to a pawn, and then you can go and do that quest to receive the reward, etc. There's a lot that goes on in considering who you want your pawn to be. For me, for the most part, I kind of just been choosing people that are negligible to me. Like I kind of just look at their vocation and say, hey, this is what I need in my team right now. This is who I'm gonna hire. I normally go for the cheapest option, but you can always, if you have enough RC, go for someone a little bit more expensive. That way, they can kind of carry your team a little bit if you're struggling. Um, but overall, I mean, again, as much as there's a lot of levers in your main character, in your how you choose to play the game as your main character, there's a lot of levers at play with the pawn system. Whether you want to use it as a way to get a lot of money or items through the questing of it, whether you want just people to help you find treasure chests, etc. Stuff like that, that I think, again, add to this game. The final thing that I really, really want to touch on, I've kind of already touched on it a lot, but I want to just drive home what makes this game so fun. And that is, again, the world that they created. This world is probably one of the most lively, one of the most like breathable worlds I think I've experienced in an open world in a very, very long time. I think this gives open worlds a run for their money, whether it be Elden Ring or Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, etc. This is an open world that has a lot going for it. Um, Mainly with the way that it plays into how you play the game. For example, if you're fighting enemies and you're kind of like at a ledge, you can knock them over and make the fight a lot quicker than it ever had to be. You can do things like dive deep into caverns and find side quests in there. You can do things like get picked up by a harpy and then they fly you somewhere crazy, and then you get dropped down and then your pawns catch you and save your life. Stuff like that, that I think a lot of this plays so much into how unsuspecting I feel in this game. Um, I'm looking at this map and there's all this black in this map and so much to discover in this game. And I feel like I'm just cracking the very early beginnings of what this open world has to offer, and that's very, very exciting. That's something that I haven't experienced in a very, very long time. It's something that, again, makes me want to find out, how deep does this game go, what else can I find throughout this game, and overall, how much more this game is gonna surprise me. Because there's a certain point where I felt like I've seen a lot that this game has to offer, and it was starting to feel a little bit repetitive. Then I ventured a little bit further out, and boom, new enemies I haven't encountered, new boss enemies I haven't encountered, a whole new village with a whole new, lore that this village has, and story going on in there. Um, and again, a lot of it is making me feel like I've only barely cracked the beginning of this game running. And again, I'm at like 25, 30 hours in the game, so this is a game that I don't know how long it's going to take for me to beat. I'm in no rush to try to beat this game, because if I was talking about the narrative of the game, I don't necessarily care about the story. I'm kind of creating my own story as it goes. And yes, a lot of times I'm gonna do the quest, obviously, to progress the story and get closer to beating the game. But a lot of it is just me running around and seeing what kind of trouble I want to get into, what I want to run into, how far I can run out there before I have to find a village desperately or a campsite desperately. Um, the item management is something that I found frustrating at first. I was easily over encumbered by all the things that I wanted to pick up. But over time, I started to learn how to manage it better. Obviously, you can carry more stuff later on. I started to figure out what I need with me at all times and what I don't need with me at all. Stuff like that, that I felt like is very, very. It's something that I think might throw people off at first, but again, it's one of the things that, just bear with it, learn it a little bit, and then you'll see that it adds to the game. It makes it more challenging in a way that doesn't feel like maybe like a Souls game feels challenging in a way where you're just learning patterns. This is more so you're kind of like figuring out what works best for you, how you're gonna play into it, etc. And I think that is where this game shines. Ultimately, it's your game. I don't think anyone's gonna play Dragon's Dogma 2 the same. We might have similar things that we're gonna work out with each other, but overall, it's a living and breathing world, and you're a character in this world, and you're just gonna kind of play it however you want to play it. And that for me has been really, really fun. 2024 has been full with tons of amazing games like Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. Stellar Blade is coming up. I'm very, very excited for that. Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth was an amazing game. Tons of awesome games in 2024, and Dragon's Dogma 2 is a game that is rising quickly to the cream of the crop. It is one of my favorite games already. As long as, again, this keeps going the way I want it to go, this is probably going to be in my top games of this year, and probably my top games of this generation when it's all said and done. This is a game that made me fall in love with open worlds again. And that is something that I never really thought I'd get that excited for. And here I am again, 20 minutes into a video talking about how much I love this game. Um, this video is running a lot longer than I ever wanted it to, so I'm just gonna end it there because I don't think I have much more to say. Um, Overall, Dragon's Dogma 2 has been a really, really fun game. This isn't a review or anything. This is just me talking about how much I love this game. And if you guys were on the fence about picking it up, I encourage you to give it a shot. If you already picked it up and maybe it wasn't for you, hopefully maybe you can kind of play it a little bit more and work through some of the kinks, and then you kind of fall in love with it the same way I did. Or if you're already in love with it, let me know down below why. Am I off base with this one, or am I pretty on the nose with what Dragon's Dogma 2 is? Again, I'm gonna end the video there. Go out there, have fun, play some games, touch some grass. See you guys in the next video.